Well, Penn State's recruiting efforts are finally paying off because some of those former top prospects are either becoming key contributors for this season and even superstars.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Yes, you are locked on to Penn State football with a hint of recruiting here, as we are going to talk about how Penn State just landed a top 100 prospect, but we're going to focus on former recruits that are now becoming key contributors and even teetering on that superstar status. My name is Zach Seyko. I am your co-host in this Locked On Crossover, credentialed media member for both Penn State football and Penn State wrestling. He is Brian Smith, the recruiting expert who is very familiar with a lot of these prospects that are from the southeast part of the country, primarily out of Florida, where Brian's been based recently over his recruiting tenure. So he is extremely familiar with the players that we're going to talk about. Zane Durant, Kaytron Allen, Antoine Belgrave-Shorter, King Mack, guys that really could emerge this season and be some of those sleeper candidates to make an impact bigger than you would expect. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now. Brian, I think it's fair to say that we should start with those superstar caliber players because Zane Durant is getting All-America recognition. Kaytron Allen, some people would say that, hey, this is a top 100 player. Some other people don't, because Nicholas Singleton kind of steals the spotlight in a sense. But then when you look at the running back rankings, he's a top 5 running back, which forms the best backfield in the country for Penn State. That's not subjective, that is objective here. So those are the two players that we have to begin with first, because Zane Durant, I do think, is being overlooked. I do think he's in that category with Peter Woods from Clemson, where those two are 1A and 1B going into this season at defensive tackle, and Kaytron Allen is a top 5 running back, and honestly not too far behind Nicholas Singleton. There's really not much that separates those two.
I think that's a great 1-2 punch. We can start with that. I mean, Penn State's got a lot of depth, a lot of juniors, seniors, fifth-year seniors, but Singleton's a different back than Allen, but they're both big guys that break tackles and make you pay. So Allen was a kid coming out of high school that was a power player that a lot of people really wanted. Penn State won out. And I think that's a kid that's probably going to play in the NFL for quite a while. So he is a load, man. He really is.
Now, Zane Durant. Zane Durant was a little more under the radar. Kaytron Allen was originally from Virginia, then transferred to IMG Academy. So there's the Florida connection. Zane Durant always talks about how cold State College is. So he really is in tune with his roots in Florida. But Zane Durant, right out of the gate, Penn State identified something, because when he was a true freshman, he was already making that same kind of, he was generating that same kind of buzz that we're now seeing. And we're going to talk about, for example, Koby Howard. Those players that there's always that true freshman, or maybe a couple of true freshmen, that generate that buzz. And that was Zane Durant once upon a time. Now he's back for year 4. And arguably, out of all the players that we're going to talk about, he could and should have the largest impact.
I wouldn't be surprised by that. Zane in high school, they played him at tight end. They played him at outside linebacker.
Really? At tight end, really? Like,
oh,
dude,
yeah. Like,
he's massive.
Well, I mean, he wasn't like, he was 240 or so, like going into his senior year of high school.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's totally a different guy now. And like in 7-on-7, he used to make crazy catches and stuff. I used to follow the team that he played with in Orlando, knew him well. He was so athletic. We didn't know exactly where he was going to play. We didn't think D tackle, I can tell you that, but we knew he was going to do something because he could move his feet so well, and he's just a super aggressive guy. So that nature probably fits the defense a little better, but he's got great hands. Like, he could be an H-back, like he could drop 20 pounds and be an H-back and play in the NFL. Like, legitimately. He absolutely could.
When I look at Penn State's perspective in all of this, there are a few select players that I say, Penn State can't afford to lose them. Or talking about value, who would be an MVP in this case? Drew Aller is going to be the obvious one because he's the quarterback, veteran, right? This team will go as far as Drew Aller takes them. But I look at Zachy Wheatley. Zane Durant falls in this category too. Part of that has to do with defensive tackle depth is a little questionable. So it's a combination of impact it's a combination of just how much better Zane Durant has gotten over the course of his collegiate career, the context that you provided that he's just a freak athlete, and he landed on that Bruce Feldman top freaks of college football for this season. So it all kind of aligns together. But after Drew Aller, I think that's the one player that Penn State can't afford to lose whatsoever. Zane Durant needs to play, and deny Dennis Sutton too, but Zane Durant in the middle there really needs to play a full season at all costs.
I'm curious to see if they can keep his snap count down. It's hard to do.
Yeah.
But like against some of these teams are playing early in the year, they got to pull him. Because if you're going to play 15, 16 games, he can't play 500 plus snaps and expect to get the best at the end of the year. So that'll be interesting to see how the younger guys develop to help Durant come over to the sideline and hang out with James and the rest of the guys, because he needs to play less, not more.
Yeah, and that will help the defensive tackle depth, get them valuable reps, and then you can trust them later in the season when the games are a little more consequential. That's why it's boring, but I do like this out of conference schedule for Penn State, because then you're going on a national title run, those reps are going to be valuable, not for Zane Durant, deny Dennis Sutton and others. It's going to be for Xavier Gilliam or Randy Adarika, who we're going to talk about in the next segment. More of the role players that maybe could be sleeper candidates to have a breakout season. Other guys that are starting caliber, do they get to that star status though? They're going to be significant contributors, but how much are they going to contribute? And it's in the defensive backfield. Antoine Belgrave-Shorter, King Mack, and Elliot Washington, all three of them together are vying for starting reps. Belgrave-Shorter's going into his second season, and somebody that is really surprised as of late. I don't think that the initial expectation was that backup role player. He might push to be that starting strong safety. Elliot Washington's in a starting cornerback battle. So in this conversation, Brian, let's make the distinction who you would trust more between King Mack and Antoine Belgrave-Shorter, who are both going after the same snaps at strong safety.
Well, King's been around longer, but Belgrave-Shorter has probably got better coverage skills just man-to-man. King's built like a boxer. I mean, he's shredded. I don't know. I've known him longer, but, I mean, it just depends on what kind of coverages you're going to run. If you're going to run more man, I'd take Shorter. King's probably a guy because he's downhill, like cover three, rat in the hole, bringing him down into the box, different things like that. I could see him being really, really good in a multitude of ways, but I would say Shorter just because of how he played in high school, probably better in man coverage.
It's interesting with scheme because Jim Knowles, I think, is going to run a lot more different man variations. I mean, it's hybrid stuff. You'll have some coverage stuff. It's the different nuances that where one player is going to go there and then another player you're not expecting to rotate to drop into coverage. That's what makes Jim Knowles' scheme so effective, but it can lead to bubbles that can burst if you're not disciplined, if you're not careful. So that's where you might have to balance that, having King Mack in select, but you also don't want to give that away, because then if offenses pick up on that, hey, King Mack's on the football field, so that's probably leaning towards zone coverage. Belgrave-Shorter's on the football field, so that's leaning towards more man coverage. I like what both of them, it's the versatility. King Mack's also going to take some reps at the slot cornerback there, but I think for Penn State that is having somewhat of a new look in the defensive backfield. You know, you lose a Kevin Winston Jr., he doesn't come back this season. And you have A.J. Harris and Zach Wheatley return. But when when Jim Knowles is bringing in his defense, the fact that somebody like Antoine Belgrave-Shorter emerging and is going to get more snaps than anticipated is obviously good news for the Nittany Lions.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got competition, guys pushing each other, especially this late in camp, you probably got some pretty good DBs. And, I mean, they're recruiting Florida kids. Mm-hmm. That's a pretty good sign within itself. But they've also signed kids that were highly acclaimed. Like King Mack had a ton of offers. Belgrave-Shorter had a ton of offers. They're doing this the right way. So I'm curious to see what Knowles does, because he runs a hybrid defense with three safeties. What they're labeled as and how they're used is two different things, in my opinion. But I think you'll see a little bit more zone this year, and they're going to look to make defense or offenses pay. They don't have valuable quarterbacks that aren't patient, because you got to kind of nickel and dime your way down the field if the safeties play like Jim wants them to. Okay. So that'll be interesting. But whichever guy is more assignment savvy will probably end up playing more.
I also want to Dejon Lane is not one of the Florida prospects since that's what we're focusing on, but that's the three-man battle between King Mack, Antoine Belgrave-Shorter, and Dejon Lane for that strong safety spot. Now, Elliot Washington, Brian, we're going to wrap up with him going into the second segment and then talk about some of those other key role players. So Elliot Washington should have a massive impact, but what about the other players behind him? We're going to discuss all of them coming up next here on this Locked On crossover. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches for just 24 hours. FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or you're ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. So take a flyer on the MVP race. Do you think it's Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson? I mean, there's plenty of quarterbacks to choose from. Joe Burrow, maybe Patrick Mahomes gets back to that status. You can crown your champion in August. So the Eagles and the Chiefs were just in the most recent Super Bowl. Is it the Bills' turn to break through? Or the Ravens? Maybe it's the Lions, or maybe you have a dark horse contender. And speaking of dark horses, you can parlay your division winners, even your dark horse choices, into one bet. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. That is over at FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. So let's continue with Elliot Washington. All eyes are on Washington because of the winter workout sessions that he had. He went a perfect 6 for 6 in the defensive backs. When it came to they nominate a winter workout warrior of the day, he won all of them. That's never happened in James Franklin's tenure. The athleticism is there. So winter workouts aren't a definitive type of thing here, but it also is a strong indication that this guy has the work ethic. This guy has and we knew about the athleticism. I mean, he's one of the fastest players overall on this team. Elliot Washington's going to play, whether he starts or not, with Davian Collins right there, former Mississippi State player that transferred in, put in the work, and now he's in a position to start. I don't think you can go wrong, but Brian, you remember Elliot Washington very well. What's his upside that makes him a clear, definitive starter rather than somebody that rotates in and out?
Well, he was a track kid, 100-meter guy. I remember I was at a tournament with him once, and he was still trying to play. He ran track the weekend before and didn't tell the coach, and he was still sore. Like, he's a super competitive kid, but he was playing corner at like 190-plus pounds. He's another kid kind of built like a boxer. He's put together, and he's physical. He played at Venice High School. I know that probably doesn't mean much to you, but that's arguably the best weightlifting program in the state of Florida. They had Damon Wilson that just transferred from Georgia to Missouri, one of the top recruits a couple of years ago, and him and Elliot were the two best players at Venice. They have always got one or two guys that are national recruits, and they're really well coached, and they come in ready to play physically, and he's a kid that can fly. So he has all the attributes to play on Sundays. I thought he'd eventually just end up being like a strong safety or something and just grow out of playing corner or nickel or anything. But Penn State's putting him where they think they can do the most. And I think he's a guy that'll tackle too. If you play at Venice, you got to tackle. Their coach is a very old school guy. So that'll help. And this defense is built for somebody like him because he can break on the ball out of a back pedal.
Now, here's this next group of players. Those are the guys that are going to either be superstar status or like a Kaytron Allen and a Zane Durant, or really start to have that breakout season. Now, these are the sleeper candidates. Koby Howard, who we talked about at length. I think the everydayers remember our conversations about Koby Howard as a prospect and when is this guy going to commit, because all the signs lined up for it, and then it eventually happened. Dakari Nelson is also in this conversation, safety turned linebacker. Already mentioned Randy Adarika. TJ Shanahan, offensive lineman who transferred in from Texas A&M, is originally from Florida, is competing for a starting spot. Out of all of those names, Brian, I know they're playing different positions, but who would you say is most in line to have the strongest contribution this season out of a reserve role?
It's hard to do that as an offensive lineman. So unless TJ starts, it won't be him. Penn State needs it to be Adarika because they're thin at D tackle. I'll just look at it from that perspective.
Thank you for saying that.
I mean, it's just like that's my biggest concern with Penn State by a million miles. It's hard to be ready as like a freshman, redshirt freshman on the interior of an offensive or defensive line because it's about grown man strength and all that. And Randy's powerful kid. We knew about him when he was a sophomore in high school, and I saw him play live and he's a nice guy and all that stuff, but he needs to take a lot of reps. And like we were just talking about earlier in reference to Durant, this is your guy. He's got to play even when he's not playing well. Like they don't have the depth they need to really have Durant come out of the lineup a ton. Adarika could prove my point wrong, though. If he takes a step a year earlier than I expect him to start next year. But the difference between one more year and where he's at now is probably pretty big. That's just typical. If he could be a 250, 300 snap guy for Penn State, they could be a business.
Honestly, when I hear that, that's lofty expectations. I don't expect a true freshman defensive tackle to do that. Just right. It's not normal. You see that with the high-end caliber prospects that Georgia's recruited or Texas over recent years, Ohio State. That I don't know applies to Randy Adarika, but like you said, he could prove us wrong because he does have the upside, and he's been, there's some buzz, but not truly like a Koby Howard. If I had to answer that question myself, I would say it's Koby Howard because similar with defensive tackle, there is a need for a young player to emerge. Sure. Tyser Denmark, you have the transfers with Trevor Pena and Kyron Hudson and Devontae Ross. But who's after that? Okay, Liam Clifford's back. Tyser Denmark has upside. But you need a two-deep rotation of three wide receivers. Who is that next player? Hey, Koby Howard is impressing. The training camp intel, from my point of view, he's running with the ones and twos. He is not just a reserve, whereas Randy Adarika is running with the reserves, and you have your clear three with Zane Durant, Alonzo Ford, and Xavier Gilliam. That's not enough for Penn State. They need a Randy Adarika or somebody else to step up into that fourth defensive tackle. Who knows who it is? That's what I mean. You don't have that definitive answer where right now at training camp, Koby Howard is going with the ones and twos. I don't know what Randy Adarika is going to give you.
Yeah, I'm not real surprised about that. I knew Koby when he was a freshman in high school. We all knew he was going to be a national recruit. He ran by guys, and he transferred down to Chaminade Madonna, which is as good a program as there is in the country for receivers. JoJo Trader and some guy named Jeremiah Smith were also there. So, decent players. But they're in a good spot with him because those older guys don't want the freshmen to beat them out, especially if they transferred in. So that's really interesting. I didn't know he was doing that well. Shout out to Kobe. His dad's a good guy, too. He's a really good guy. I'm curious to see where they play him, inside, outside, or both. Like how much of the playbook are they going to put on it? Because it matters where you line up. And I don't know. I don't have any insights at Penn State. I don't have any contacts there. But that's a kid that is electric when it comes to making players miss. Screen game, is he returning kicks by chance or punts, or is he
in the competition? I don't think he'll be the first guy up, but he's in the competition.
Yeah. He'll do that before he leaves Happy Valley. His first step ability to make guys miss is pretty impressive.
Well, like that in the screen game or out of the slot. It's the versatility that Koby Howard has because he is, I do believe that he'll play outside, inside. I don't think he's going to be boxed into one receiver position at this point in time. So, but like you said, it's an interesting point. As a true freshman, can he handle that? Tyser Denmark, similar timeline, but never translated last season. So kind of a similar setup for Koby Howard if he can actually break through. Let's talk about Dakari Nelson as a player who came in with a high pedigree as a safety, but there was a need for linebacker. It wasn't working out at safety for Dakari Nelson. He puts on the weight. He brings over the athleticism down into the box. And Brian, I thought this would have been a smart strategic move. I really liked it when they made it at the time, even though it seemed like it was out of necessity. It actually didn't seem like a bad idea whatsoever. But when I look at the linebacker depth chart, Jim Knowles has said recently, I only trust 3 players, Amari Campbell, Dom DeLuca, Tony Rojas. Okay. But then Dakari Nelson's in that bunch where like, this is a veteran player. At some point, he's got to make a move to where he does see those reps, those live snaps, or I could see him somewhere else potentially after this season. So it's kind of a make or break year for him. What do you remember about Nelson as a prospect?
Played wide receiver, played defensive back, very confident young man, tremendous hands. Like he could have been a big-bodied H-back or wide receiver or something like that. He's a guy that's pretty twitchy for his size. Coming out of high school, he was 190, 195, something like that. But now he's listed at like 220, give or take. I'm surprised they haven't, at least maybe they are, use him as a blitzer, even if it's not as a pure defensive end. That's part of it. In nickel and dime package, he should be on the field because that is an exceptional football player from an athletic standpoint. When the task is simplified, and Jim's defense is not easy. This is probably not the best player to be moving, and it also being Jim Knowles' defense. It's not a good combination. It just is what it is. But if they can simplify it for him and just give him a role, they might be able to get him into next year because it takes a long time to learn Knowles' defense. It's not easy. But let him just do one thing and do it really, really well. Like the old saying, I'd rather be great at one thing than a jack of, nothing, basically, because I know everything just a little bit. Like, yeah, that's probably where he's at right now. But the athleticism and the length, Dakari's a really high upside kid if they can find that niche for him. I don't know how much he likes playing linebacker, but he was always physical. So it's in his blood. Now they just got to make sure he understands playbook.
I trust him in pass defense, obviously, because of playing DB. He's got the athleticism. It's in run defense. Is he going to get bullied out of the box if he has to take that read step, take on a guard that's at, when you're not 240, 250 pounds, okay, you have all the athleticism in the world, but you're just going to get shoved out of the pile. That's kind of my concern with Nelson. I know that he's strong, but when there's somebody that's 300 plus pounds running right at you, a pulling guard, Nelson, that's, I think, his biggest obstacle to being a complete linebacker. So speaking of offensive linemen that are 300 plus pounds, TJ Shanahan transfers in. I'm not sure how Penn State was able to pull that off because he started in the SEC at Texas A&M. He was a former 5-star recruit according to the old Rivals service. And now he's going to be a backup. He's going to be a rotation guy at Penn State. I think long term, they expect him to start going into next season because there's going to be so much turnover. But James Franklin says he's in a battle for the starting right guard spot right now with Anthony Donko and Cooper Cousins. I don't see it happening. I think that's coach speak for we like TJ Shanahan. But Brian, what do you remember about him as an elite prospect?
Yeah, he was a guy that was insanely strong, like just incredible strength. He developed very early. He was like, biggest kid in the grade kind of thing, but he had feet to go with it. He could kick step as a left tackle and go against speed rushers, but as he got bigger and just with his mentality, like guard made more sense. Like he could play right tackle at Penn State. I have no doubts about it athletically, but his mentality is guard. He doesn't want to block people. He wants to destroy them and tackle that can get you in trouble. So I would imagine speed rushers would give him some problems at times because he'd get a little bit out over his toes trying to hammer him. But as a run blocker, and of course what Penn State wants to do, he's a great fit. Like if he had to start this year, they'd be fine. Because he got pass protection at guard to get a lot of help anyway.
Starting caliber player that is going to be a backup on Penn State. That's why I'm so high on this.
He's an elite athlete now. No lie.
Very high on this offensive line for that reason. It's not about the starting unit. It's about the backups that are behind them where you're not going to see a drop-off if a starter is unavailable. Mm-hmm. Well, we've talked about elite former recruits. How about a current one? Penn State lands another addition in the class of 2027. This guy is a top 100 prospect. It also shows that Penn State just continues to dominate the state, and particularly Pittsburgh. We're going to discuss Gabe Jenkins and what he brings to the Nittany Lions class of 2027 next here on this Locked On Crossover. And today's episode is brought to you by Rugiet. Guys, you probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them, but if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Ready. Rugiet Ready is the next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rugiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under the tongue and kicks in fast, on average in 15 minutes, and effects can last up to 36 hours, so you stay confident, you stay in control when the moment is right. If traditional options haven't worked, Rugiet might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. Head over to Rugiet.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege to get 15% off today. That is RUGIET, Rugiet.com/LockedOnCollege and use promo code LockedOnCollege for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rugiet website for full safety information. All right, let's get to know Gabe Jenkins. 6 foot, around 190 pounds. He has college-ready size already as a 2027 defensive back. Now he plays a little bit of running back as well. So Brian, I saw a majority of the rushing film that he put together because this guy's has 1,300 yards as a running back his sophomore season. You watched, of course, primarily the defensive back. But we see both sides of it, the versatility, the athleticism, the acceleration, everything that he showed offensively translates immediately over to the defensive side. So he is being recruited as a defensive back. 24/7 has him as a top 60 player in the nation, top 10 cornerback overall, number 3 prospect in Pennsylvania. If you want to go with the industry is not entirely as high as 24/7 is on Gabe Jenkins, but this goes back to Penn State just continues to get the best. So there's twofold in this conversation. One, you're getting an elite caliber prospect to commit to you early in this 2027 cycle. You're getting potentially a shutdown cornerback. This is your first defensive commit in the class of 2027 for Penn State. And he's from Pittsburgh. It's almost too easy at this point, Brian. This is probably a replay of the last conversation that we had about Penn State going into Pittsburgh. They get Keemon Spells in this class, Khalil Taylor, and Gabe Jenkins. Brian, where are they all from? Pittsburgh.
That city's always been really good at football, man. In high school ranks, it means something. What is it, WPIL or I
yep,
forget
the
what
WPIL. Yep.
Yeah, it's always been outstanding, and I'm glad that Penn State. I mean, they recruit nationally to a certain degree, but I'm glad they're sticking to their roots and still getting some of those kids. You're going to lose a kid here or there to Ohio State or Notre Dame or Michigan or whatever, but they should win most of the in-state battles, and that's what they're doing. And I think it will hold the fans' interest. The kids will play harder. They're less likely to transfer. And this kid's film, like, as soon as you put it on by the third clip, you're like, okay, it's just kind of entertainment at this point because it's obvious he can play a lot of spots. You can play him a receiver if you wanted. He'd figure it out. He's got great hands, breaks on the ball extremely well. I personally think he'll end up at free safety long-term because he'll outgrow corner. But I thought that about Elliot Washington too. And I mean, he can play corner safety or what. I don't think it really matters where you play Elliot at this point. He's figured it out. But they're similar. Like that's a really good comp would be Elliot for him. A lot of us thought that he would play safety at the collegiate level almost exclusively. That's not been the case. He just kept honing his craft. This kid is a very, very similar player. The break on the ball is great, but the most important thing is his anticipation. He doesn't get fooled very often. And he's not playing great comp, so he should dominate, and he does. Like, he embarrasses guys, makes guys miss. When he gets the football on an interception, he baits quarterbacks into throws that you're like, as soon as you see the ball in here, you already know what's going to happen. But that's the way it should be if you're a dominant player. This kid will play early at Penn State, no doubt.
He had 6 interceptions a season ago. So it backs up what you're seeing on tape to the tangible results. Again, I do have questions about the competition. Amani Christian, where he currently goes to high school. Maybe he does transfer. We saw Khalil Taylor make that move to go from Seton LaSalle to Pine Richland. That's one of the more notable schools in the state of Pennsylvania overall, let alone the western side of the state. So maybe that's a move for Jenkins down the road, but he's not ranked as a top 100 player, conservatively by accident. Okay. So he's doing things in these 7-on-7 camps. Penn State wouldn't push for his commitment if they didn't believe in him. So just because the high school competition isn't the greatest, it's like you said, he doesn't really struggle. I think he just sees the game very well. And when you become a junior, and you get really into the heart of your senior season, that's where it starts to click for some of the better football prospects. But he sees the game well now. His sophomore season backs that up. Year 2, And like you said, it's the anticipation. He doesn't get confused. It translates to both sides of the football. Again, I'm watching the offensive tape. You're watching the defense primarily, but that's the first highlight reel that I see. And just sees the lane, knows the cutback, knows when to bounce it outside, and he's not running into unnecessary obstacles. It's almost too easy for him, which is where I want to see him go up to a bigger high school.
Yeah, if he ended up at IMG or something his senior year, it wouldn't surprise me. It would do him some good from that standpoint, just the competition and practice more than the games, to be honest with you. But, I mean, he doesn't look bored on the field. Like, he plays really hard. Like, sometimes when you get kids at this level, they go half speed sometimes, and it drives me nuts. He doesn't. So that's a good sign. And if you have that drive, it'll still work out, but you're just not getting the same reps every day in practice, and certainly not in the games against some of the kids he's going against.
Let's finish with this. Again, the Pittsburgh area recruiting, Terry Smith has that on lockdown. Pitt, West Virginia. Now, West Virginia does have a commitment from one of the top players in Pennsylvania, so I'll give them that. Rich Rodriguez has to get back into the swing of things. But there's just no resistance on the western side of the state. This is a jab at Pitt. I don't know what Pat Narduzzi's doing when these guys are a hop, skip, and a jump away. You should win some of these recruiting battles. So great. Penn State just continues to go into that tap into that Pittsburgh pipeline, bring over some recruits. I coined the phrase, the best in Pittsburgh leave for Penn State. James Franklin will always say the best in Pennsylvania stay in Pennsylvania. Let's modify that a little bit. The best in Pittsburgh leave for Penn State. And I get some pushback. Well, Darrelle Revis didn't and Dan Marino didn't. Okay.
That's been a minute.
Yeah, I'm not talking about a couple of superstar players once upon a time. How about let's look over the past couple of years, 5 years, 10 years, where Penn State, since James Franklin has taken over, Pittsburgh has not been an issue whatsoever. It has been a Nittany Lions stronghold for the entire time since Franklin has taken over. Yeah,
I mean, again, you're going to lose a couple of kids every year. That's fine. But overall, I don't know what happened to Pittsburgh recruiting. It's bad. It's bad. It's Penn State's run them over and kind of ran them off the road.
They already have three of the top. Pittsburgh's actually really loaded with top-end talent this season. Again, Keemon Spell, western side of Pennsylvania. Gabe Jenkins, Pittsburgh. Khalil Taylor, Pittsburgh. There are a couple other prospects to keep an eye on. We'll see how it all unfolds. But it should not shock anyone if Penn State's able to land names like Javian Robinson or Carter Bonner, guys that are also from the Pittsburgh area. Jimmy Callis. If Penn State pushes for those commitments, if they want them, probably going to get them. So those are some other players. They're in the top 10 according to 24/7 in the state overall. So those are the next names to know if Penn State's going to continue to push in Pennsylvania. They might end up in the class of 2027 as well. And Pitt and West Virginia are just going to look around and say, what happened? We have no idea.
Yeah, that's how you lose. Good for Penn State, bad for them.
And that's going to do it for this Locked On crossover, talking a hint of Penn State football recruiting, but primarily as we gear up for the season, this is it. We are right within the window of Penn State versus Nevada. Recruiting's still going to go on. So as Penn State picks up commitments, whether it's in 27, further out in the future, or if they're able to add a couple more prospects in 2026, Brian and I will react to all of it. My name is Zach Seyko, your host of Locked On Nittany Lions. As always, Brian Smith, the recruiting expert here on the Locked On Podcast Network, also hosts The Portal, all things transfer portal, high school football recruiting. Recruiting never sleeps. Neither does Brian. Brian, thank you so much for the time. Glad we could get together for another crossover episode and can't wait for another conversation, whether it's recruiting related or college football. Excited and eager to have it.
Absolutely. Let's get into college football now. I'm ready.